the stack.
Yeah,
So
do
you
you
know the
see it?
stack shopping
Stack.
park. So over there is where the retail park is.
Yes.
ফাতিমা এখানে চলে আসো, উনি কথা বলবে, ওনাকে রেকর্ড করো। তোমার তোমার ক্যামেরাটা অন করে রাখো।
The others, hopefully they can come over and hear the first as well.
That's very cool.
No, that's my one.
Oh, I've got.
You have a look at both of them? Get the good view of Daisy. Yep. And me. And I'm Colin. Okay.
Oh, it's really.
Can you hear me over there?
Yeah.
That's okay, it's fine.
I didn't expect it.
You can never tell. Came
এই
over
যে
here
এই
about
বাচ্চাটা আর
30
ফাতিমা
on
দুজন,
the edge.
উনি কি বলবে উনি রেকর্ড করবে।
Okay, well, welcome to Dundee Law. I understand a few of you haven't been up here before, so it's good that you're here today. And we are the Friends of Dundee Law. I'm Colin, I'm the treasurer. Trying to hit that thing. David is the chair, and Laura's the secretary. So, and Christina, who's doing some litter picking, is also on the committee. Okay, and we're here today. Dundee Law has a really long history. I was showing a couple of people when we were coming up there the old whalebone arch that you can see on the way up from when you're going up that way. If you go up by the road, you can see it anyway. Just to this side, the north side of the path, and the whalebone arch signifies that Dundee has been using this site. People in the area of Dundee were using that site for thousands of years because there were Bronze Age kissed graves, which are basically holes dug in the ground to bury people, which were here something like 4,000 years ago. So it's a really long time ago. And then about 2,000 years ago, we had a hill fort up here, an Iron Age hill fort. So that was when Iron Age was when basically people learned how to use iron tools. So they were using them up here, and this we're right standing on where the old hill fort used to be, right here. You can kind of see some of the bits right up in the corner there, up in that top right corner. You can see that bit that's kind of up a bit. Well, that's part of the old hill fort. That's kind of the best bit that's left because a lot's been built on it since then in the 2,000 years. But what would have happened was the people who lived here 2,000 years ago or so, 2,500 years ago, if it looked like there was times of danger, they would bring all their cattle up here and just make it indefensible. So it was really hard to get up here and attack. You can only imagine how difficult it would be to attack up here because it's so steep to get up. So that's what happened. People came up here in times of peril and they stayed here for long enough until other people basically ran out of food or whatever and went away. That was the theory. And it was also used as some sort of ceremonial site as well because eventually they burned the place. And we think it was done deliberately. And the way it used to be built was there were layers of stone and then layers of timber and then other layers of stone. So if you set fire to the timber in between, it would superheat because it was between layers of stone, kind of like a really hot oven, and that burned down the whole fort.
And melted the stone.
It did melt the stone, as David said.
Yeah.
That turned it into what's called vitrified stone, so that basically becomes like glass. And there was some of that was found, and that is now in the McManus down in the city. Okay, so that was thousands of years ago, and also the Romans were here back about 2,000 years ago as well, and they came, but we don't think they took over the area. I think what they did was traded with the locals, and their trading meant that they gave something called a kind of pottery called Samianware, which was basically how they bribed the locals so they didn't get attacked. It's much easier than having a big fight with them. You just basically say, look, we'll trade with you, we'll give you this stuff if you'll just let us go through your land, and that's what they did, we think. So it's been getting used for thousands of years, and it's always been this cold and wet up here as well, just to give you an idea. So the rain is on again. It's not unusual that it becomes rainy up here either, but you do get great views. It's one of the pluses of this area is that it's such a great view. But it's another reason they would have the hill fort here, because from this area you'd be able to see people coming for miles and miles around. It was back in the era before all these buildings were here too, or the bridges or anything. So you could see right all the way halfway to Perth. You could see out all the way to just about Arbroath and St Andrews to the south of us. So it was really great. You could see the whole surrounding countryside. And if there was an army coming to attack you, you'd know all about it. So it made sense building your home here, or at least the place where you could defend yourself up here.
And we're surrounded by other bulwarks.
There
So they could see. So there was one up the house in Sidwell, and you could see it there, and there's one over in Fife. And whether they were deliberately building in view of their neighbours so they could signal to them, or it was just like a statement, you know. So, but before that, even before that, millions of years ago.
David's going to do the
Yeah,
geology
I
bit
shall
now.
talk about geology.
He's an expert
so,
on
so
that.
what I was going to suggest first is you can turn around and have a look at the water, and if you can tell something that once you know is going to be really obvious. So can anyone tell me something about the river or the Firth of Tay? Well, think of how wide the valley is. So if you think of the Tay Valley, it comes from here across the Five, but there's only water in the bottom bit. And this is a geological feature, and it's called a misfit river. And misfit rivers are because during the Ice Age, the whole area from over in Fife to here and beyond was a glacier. So think of a moving river of ice, like you see on documentaries, about 3 miles wide, and at least 1 kilometre high, and that was moving from Perth direction. And we know from boulders it left behind that it actually glaciers started on Rannoch Moor, because there are rocks that were formed on Rannoch Moor have been dropped off on the way, and the bottom of the glacier is like rough sandpaper with all these boulders in the bottom, and it grinds out the valley. So now, because there's not enough ice, or no ice at the moment, and because of all this stuff they're picking up, it's like a bulldozer, and it shows this big pile of rubbish. And we know the glacier ended about, I think, 10 kilometres out to sea, where there's this end point, which is a little rocky mound. And apparently, the fishermen here call it the Wee Bank, and it's a famous fishing spot.
No.
So, what we're standing on, now everyone thinks of the law as a volcano. It isn't. It's a volcanic rock, but it didn't actually erupt. The volcano that came from is over there in front. So there's what's called a reservoir of molten rock underneath. And it's so we were part of a collision between several continents which formed this supercontinent, which included it's called Eurasia or Laurussia, and it involved the UK, bits of America, and bits of Europe, which eventually split up. So we were actually on the coast of that supercontinent. And it's called the Old Red Sandstone Continent because a lot of the rock, which you can see, is called red sandstone. And what happened is when these continents hit each other, they formed this massive mountain range as high as the Himalayas. And it's the same, so at the moment, for example, India is hitting the rest of Asia, and the pressure is causing the Himalayas to fall. And that's because two continents hit each other, and one of them will slide under the other, but the pressure will force the mountains up. So we know there's these mountains in the Cairngorms, thousands of metres high, and when that stopped, they started being eroded by the weather, like we've got now. And a lot of it came in big rivers into here. So what we've got a mixture of is sandstone, which you can see, there are quarries around the place. And because we were still in shock from this, all this hitting each other, we had volcanic activity. So we've got layers of sandstone, then layers of volcanic lava. And when they were building the V&A, they did what's called drill core to see how stable the bottom was. And essentially, we got a layer of mud. But before that, we got a layer of building material because the V&A was built on an old dock. So we got the elements of dock, then we got a layer of mud, then sand and gravel through to where the glaciers were, and then all the way down from there is volcanic rock. It's called something called andesite or basalt, and it's really fractured. So the law is made out of andesite. And what we think happened is it was buried in that sandstone. And when glaciers came along, it wore away the sandstone because that's easier to wear away. But this bit stayed, and we're part of a formation which includes Balgate Hill. So think of this massive wall of ice coming from that direction. And it's worn away the sandstone, and it hits this really hard rock. So if you look over the edge there, but that's not. So that side of the wall is really steep because that's where the ice hits.
ফাতিমা পুরো ভিজে
Around
গেছে
the law, so if you go down the other side, say what is now Hill Street down to Strathmartin Road, that is where all of the debris from the glacier left behind. So that's called the crag, because it's a steep slope there, and that's called the tail. So it's a gentle slope there, so that's covered in sort of boulders and gravel and all this sort of stuff.
গুড থ্যাংক ইউ
And the crag and tail that David's just been describing, that was important because they came to build the railway here. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there's actually a railway tunnel underneath this hill. And it's just on your way up, there's a sign just as the road comes around here, and it basically says the Sight Old Law Tunnel. Because what used to happen was the railway started, it was the Dundee to Newtile rail, and it was one of the oldest railways in the world. So it was 1830 it started, and they built it from down where, if you know where the BT building is,
yeah.
on Ward Road.
yeah
That's where it started. That was the old station, Dundee to Newtile, and it went all the way up to Newtile, which is up there somewhere. Well, what I said was basically up that way, and it used to bring all the goods from Angus down to Dundee, where it would all be shipped off around the world. But they built a tunnel up here because they thought the best thing to do was to lift it up here. So they pulled it up the engine, and then they got the momentum going down the hill so that they go all the way to Angus with less energy needed. But that meant they had to put a tunnel through here, so they put it down that side over there. And the problem was they thought they were going to make a lot of money by quarrying all the hard rock down there and selling it off. But as we've just heard, all the rock on that side is the soft stuff, the hard stuff's all on this side. So instead of actually making money and selling off all the rock, they ended up costing a fortune to try and shore it up and make it safe for trains to go through. So it ended up costing a lot. It's still down there, there's a few hundred metres and it's still underneath, but it's all closed off these days. And it didn't last very long, it was 1830 to 1860 it was running that railway. And then they just moved it round. Once the energy got a bit better, the efficiency of the engines was a lot better after 30 years, so that's what they did.
You can still see the ends of the tunnel. So there's the housing estate over the Law Road, and you can see where the tunnel was. It's all been filled in. But on the other side, because they didn't have steam trains that moved, they had to build what's called a static steam engine, and they built it on the just below the high curb. And if you look at the house across the road, they've actually got a manhole cover in their garden, which gets them access to the Law Tunnel. But it was built over the entrance. But what would happen is the steam engine would pull up the trucks up to there, and then the idea was it would go through the tunnel, and then it would carry on. And they had, I think, powered by donkeys or by sails. The idea was you could sail your way across to the Strathmore Valley. But when they invented steam engines that move, the sides of the Law were still too steep. So they built these wonderful things called deviations. So the one we've got in Dundee is called the Lochee deviation, and you can see bits of it which sort of went around the hill here, up through there, and out to the stack. So there's still bits of the railway line there. And it came round this way, through the Miley, and if you know where the retail park on the Kingsway, where Tesco is, that used to be a goods yard. So all under there used to be Marchmont and what is now the council depot off Clappington Road, and you can see it's at Fairmuir Park. If you're going up Strathmartin Road, you can see what used to be a railway bridge that you go over. So you can see bits of it. A few of us actually walked it about 7 or 8 years ago with a colleague in the middle of winter, and we started with there's 3 deviations of that. And lots of side tracks because a lot of the industry here was quarrying, so for sandstone.
Borrow these gloves if you want. You know what gloves? Okay. I don't want them. That's up to you. As we're getting retrained, is there something about activity? Yeah, well, I was going to do some bit watching if we want to do that.
Do you want to go and look at our view as well?
Have a look at it. Are you able to get up there?
So there's a track just outside that goes to the car. Yes. Yeah. So,
চলো যাই আমরা এখন যাচ্ছি বার্ড ওয়াচ করতে, এখানে কি কি ওয়াইল্ড লাইফ দেখা যায় কি আরও ডিটেলস জানার জন্য। তো বৃষ্টি শুরু হয়ে গেছে, এটাই সবচেয়ে মানে বিরক্তিকর। ড্রাই থাকলে ভালো হতো। খুব সুন্দর একটা ইভেন্ট এটা, কিন্তু মেঘলা মেঘলা ওয়েদার, বৃষ্টি। তো এই তাও বাচ্চারা এনজয় করছে, এই যে ছোটো ছোটো বাচ্চারা আছে সাথে। যে ও আসবে বলে ওরা ইয়াটা আর্চটা তুলে দিল, ওরা ঢুকতে পারলো। ও এখনো পরিষ্কার করে চলছে, যেখানে যা পাচ্ছে সুন্দর করে তুলছে, জায়গাটা পরিষ্কার লাগে দেখতে।
So we're actually now